Hi, Akash. Thank you so much for joining me today. This is Yati from Drivedaddy. I'm really excited to have you on my show.
Hey, Yati. It's pleasure to be here, and I hope it will be helpful for many people, specifically given this journey being very difficult in Sweden compared to India and everywhere else as well. So I hope it will be useful. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Before starting, Akash, can we have a little introduction?
So my name is Akash Kumar Vashist, and I'm from India. And then for last 4 years, I'm in Sweden, working as a researcher initially, and now I'm assistant professor at the University of Gothenburg. And as well, last year I started a position in University of Tohoku University in Japan. And in terms of my driving journey, I was driving in Delhi for a lot of time, like almost for 4 years.
It was really nice hearing about you. And to my all listeners, welcome to Drive Daddy. So, the objective of this podcast is to bring valuable insights and tips for driving license aspirants. And today we have Akash with us, who conquers the process and now is approved to drive officially in Europe. First of all, I would like to congratulate you, Akash.
Yeah, thank you very much.
So, before we dive into the main discussion, I would like to start with some of the light questions like, what's something exciting that happened in this journey with you?
So the first thing so as I told you that I have been in Sweden for 4 years, and initially you can drive for first 1 year without even taking a Swedish license.
Yeah.
So initially when we moved here, I and my wife, we did not like Sweden has a very good local transportation, so you don't even need to drive that much.
Mm-hmm.
So we never tried and we never looked for it. And then in 2022 we had a baby, and now after 1 year, and when she's like a toddler now, we felt like, oh, it would be nice if we have a car. And also sometimes when our family visits to Sweden, we
Mm-hmm.
always feel that we should have a car so that we can take them to different places or even go to with our friends to different places. So that was something that motivated me. And the most interesting thing when I started learning driving in Sweden is that specifically when you read theory, you get to know various situations that are very intriguing, that, oh, that can happen. And that is how you should develop your thinking, how to respond to those situations. So the most important part, if I answer in terms of my learning or in terms of what I really enjoyed while learning the driving in Sweden, it was learning the theory and learning the different situations and how to tackle them.
We would like to talk more about how you felt, how difficult it was.
So fortunately, like I joined a Facebook group for this
Mhm.
iCore channel. And when I joined it, and I later when I now I have the license, I recommend people to not join that group to start away.
Mhm.
Maybe give your first exam and then join that group, because most of the stories that we get from that group is a bit of
Mhm.
negatives. There's a lot of helpful stuff. I would not say that it is not helpful at all. It is quite helpful, and people usually give really nice suggestions. But
Mhm.
sometimes it also gets a bit negative, because when I started, I was already the part of the group and I was listening to people and looking at their stories, that they have attempted for 4 or 5 times and even more, and spend a lot of money and tried some hours and a lot of thing. And that basically made me a little bit anxious about the whole process. And that is also one of the reason why I kind of delayed it a little bit. But then when I started it, fortunately I felt it really smooth. It
Mhm.
was tough. You have to give time. You have to learn a lot of new things compared to if you have driven in India or any other country which is too crowded, then you have to unlearn the things first and
Mhm.
then have to learn new things that are very custom to Swedish environment. So that was kind of a tedious task in the journey to unlearn everything, because in India,
That's really tough.
yeah,
I understand.
yes, yes. So it's very, very different driving
Mhm.
skills that are required in two different countries.
Mhm.
So the unlearning was the most tedious task, but otherwise, fortunately, I basically started and ended everything in about a month. And
So,
yeah,
which year do you started learning this?
in Sweden, is your
I
question
mean,
in Sweden?
yeah. I mean, when did you started learning driving here? Like with the along with the theory part.
So basically, I made up my mind in the first week of September that I have to get the license. And in the first week and the second week of September, one of my colleague in my department had this English driving book. So I just took it and I started reading it for 2 3 days only. Like just
Mm-hmm.
within the week, I read it through the book. And then I went to one of the traffic schools to gather the information. And then they told me, you have to first register on this website for the learner's permit. And then you have to go to this eye test. And then you can start learn driving with us.
Okay.
So I did the same thing the same night. I submitted the document. The next day, I went to Spec Sever office and gave my eye test. And my learner's permit was there the next day evening. And from the next day itself, I went to the traffic school and registered for 5 classes. And
Mm-hmm.
within a week, I started learning. So by the September 3rd week, I already started getting lessons.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that was it. And then by first week of October, I actually already took 5 lessons.
Okay.
And first week of October, when I was already have gone through few driving lessons and I have already read book one time,
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to give first the theory test, because once you give the theory test, then only you will get a three
Course.
four
Yeah.
months
Yeah.
of period for your
Mm-hmm.
driving test. So
Uh-huh.
I wanted to give it. So I studied through the iCorcot app for almost a week, very rigorously, like
Mm-hmm.
almost 3 hours a day. And I initially read through their learner's game, and
Okay.
then I start giving the exams. So initially I was scoring like 70, 75, 80, and then it keep on increasing. And once it got to 90, I started giving the unanswered questions. So basically I completed all their 1400 questions in a week.
Wow.
And once that is done, I basically just looked online that when is the nearest slot available. And on
Mm-hmm.
Friday evening, I found a slot that there is a slot available on Monday morning.
Uh,
Or no, not Monday, but Thursday next week. So I
okay.
booked a Thursday next week slot and I gave the exam.
Okay. Okay. So in the first attempt, you cleared your theory and practical test, I believe.
Yes.
Oh, that's great.
Mm.
And so, which was the center you went to?
It was Heising. It was Heising in Gothenburg, or
Okay.
Hising. Some people call it Hising. So maybe my pronunciation would not be that great.
Yeah. No, no, it's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, were there any specific tasks or checkpoints they asked you to do while your driving test? How did you handle them?
So that was very interesting, actually. So my time was around 12:30 p.m. on a
Mhm.
Monday afternoon. So Mondays are usually a bit hectic, as well
Mhm.
as that area is also a bit hectic around the lunchtime, because there's a lot of offices and there's a lot of malls. So there's a lot of people around it. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, that day was also raining, so which means that
Oh,
traffic is a bit slower, and obviously everything moves slower, and there is a lot of people on the road because of the
right.
slow movement.
Mhm.
So when I reached to the center, I was just waiting there for half an hour, because I reached half an hour earlier. And I was just waiting for the instructor or the examiner to come. And then the examiner came, and he had a kind of a tablet with him. And then he started explaining that what will happen today.
Okay.
And tried to strike a general conversation with him and be confident and like relax the situation, because obviously I was giving an exam after maybe 10 years
Yeah.
or something. So obviously whenever you give exam, no matters if you're a professor or whatever you are, if you're giving exam, you are a bit nervous all the time.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
So that was the same thing with me. I was a bit nervous. So I wanted to relax that by talking to him. And then he asked me whether you have any driving license and experience. Then I told yes, I had a driving license from India for
Mm-hmm.
4 years. I had driven in Delhi, and I'm pretty much confident. Then he asked me that whether have you driven the electrical cars. So all this is happening before we get to the car,
Okay. Okay.
in the hallway of the transport, what do you call it, traffic bucket.
Okay.
So, and he asked me, have you ever driven an electric car? I said, no, I've never driven an electric car. I was driving
Mm-hmm.
a manual i10 in India for a long time. Then he
Mm-hmm.
was okay, good, good. And then we just talked a little bit more about it. And then we went to the car, and he showed me first the car, that, okay, this is the car. This is how it looks like. He did not specifically ask me to check anything from outside, because also it was raining.
Okay.
So we did not want it to stop outside a lot of time. And it was a brand new car. So I think that was also one of the reasons why
Mm-hmm.
I did not ask it. And then we went inside the car, and then he showed me how to adjust the seat. And then after that, he showed me the tablet that there will be some safety checks that you should do. So
Okay.
what I did is that I checked my seat belt, because
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of the only thing that I could check. And then
Mm-hmm.
I adjusted my seat in a way that I can have a good view. I
Mm-hmm.
should not be sitting very down or not leaning too much backwards. So I straighten the seat in such a way that I have a straight view and a good view on the windshield.
Mm-hmm.
Then since it was raining and it was a bit cold as well, there was a lot of fog on the front windshield as well
Mhm.
as on the side view mirrors. And it was a Volvo XC40. So
Okay.
I asked him that which button should I press to reduce this fog, and then he told me, no, this is the button. And then I was actually a bit surprised that side view mirror, it had a lot of water droplets. So I
Mhm.
asked him that it's a bit difficult for me to see anything in the side view mirror. Should I go out and clean it? But he said, no, you have a button for that. And he showed me, okay, if you press this button, the side view mirror can also get cleaned.
Okay. Okay.
So
So
this was
quite.
more or less about,
Yeah.
safety checks.
Okay. Okay. So did he ask you something specific to perform, like to take a U-turn or to do
Yeah,
parking
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
specifically?
yeah, it was like a full detailed test, and almost every thing that I have read that they will test was part of the test. So we started from the hiring center, and then he basically was when we were doing the security check. There were almost 15 candidates who were leaving at the same time.
Okay.
So it was quite crowded actually, and there were a lot of cars and students who were leaving one by one, or
Mm-hmm.
the people
Mm-hmm.
who came for the exam were leaving one by one. And this, for me, since I was doing this fog check and different other things, maybe it took a little bit more time. So
Mm-hmm.
almost everybody has left. Only two, three people were remaining, and that
Mm-hmm.
actually gave me one good thing, that there was less people and less crowd in the small parking lot, so I could
Mm-hmm.
easily do a reverse with us. So we started with reversing a little bit and then getting out of the transport workit, and then
Mm-hmm.
we took the first roundabout from the Heising on the left side, and we went towards the motorway.
Okay.
So, but before motorway, actually, we were just driving in on a 50-kilometer speed road. It was a kind of a country road. And then we came at a traffic, sorry, not traffic, what do you call it? It's a train track. So that was kind of the first task, I would say, after the roundabout.
Oh.
So the first task was to go through the roundabout, take the third
Mm-hmm.
exit.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I did it well. And then we
Yeah.
went to the then we went to this train track where
Mm-hmm.
there was a traffic already. So there were two, three cars ahead me. So I
Mm-hmm.
waited, and then he has already told me that I had to take a left, sorry, right after the traffic track. So I chose the lane very particularly, that this would be the right lane to turn
Mm-hmm.
right.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the traffic track, that as I have read and as I've practiced with my instructors, that always whenever you are crossing through traffic track, you should be extra cautious and look everywhere, like left and right. There's no train coming. And once you are on the track, try to pass swiftly without stopping there. So
Mm-hmm.
this is what I did. Then we crossed this train track, and
Mm-hmm.
took a right turn. And then he took me to a densely built up area where he asked me to do parallel parking.
Okay.
And there, I think I nailed it and I did it really well. And he was also very impressed and told me, you are really good at it. I said, yeah, I practiced it a lot. So
Yeah.
that was kind of the thing that set up a mood for him, maybe I can say that because that was the best thing that I did at that day.
Yeah.
Yeah, after that, we were just like for almost 5 to 10 minutes, we were in the densely built up areas. He told me left, right, left, right, left, right. A lot of times we crossed different small densely built up streets. So
Mm-hmm.
all the time I was indicating whenever he told me, okay, left, right, left, right. About parking, actually, I would like to mention here is that there are some key points that my instructors told me, and eventually they are really important.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever you want to leave parking, you should look at your side mirror, blind spot, and then indicate that you
Oh.
want to leave the parking.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
this is one of the tests, and actually, if you don't do it, you will not be considered fit for driving, because then you are creating a hazardous situation.
Oh.
And after that, we were just crossing a lot of crossways, and every time whenever I was crossing a crossway, because it's a densely built up area, so right hand rule applies, and I was always checking for the pedestrian, cyclist, and basically I was pushing myself from my seat on towards windshield and looking left and right.
Mm-hmm.
So creating an impression that I am actually very cautious about these things.
Yeah.
And it is very important, and it is actually very important in Sweden because there are a lot of cyclists and people walking,
Gosh.
and
Yeah.
sometimes there are people running actually. So it is
Mm-hmm.
not only just to show him, but it is also important to get into your habit that
Mm-hmm.
whenever you are crossing such streets, you should always look around. The
Yeah.
one thing that I actually did was, so there
Mm-hmm.
were two bad things that happened in the whole test. The one
Yeah.
thing was that when I was crossing one of the crossways in the densely built up areas,
Mm-hmm.
I he told me to turn left. I did
Mm-hmm.
not indicate it and just turned
Oh,
left.
oh,
But
oh.
I realized it as soon as I turned left. So, and
Okay.
there was no one, so I just told him, "Oh, I should have indicated."
Okay. Okay. Uh,
So I
he's he,
basically
he
told him
was
that I knew
yeah.
it, but I just
Mm-hmm.
forgot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So he was very
And
kind and had a good, mixing with you. So maybe things went well.
yes, yes. And I think the worst thing that happened was at the end.
Okay.
So he told me initially on a straight kind of it was a kind of a normal road, and then it goes into the countryside road. It
Okay.
starts from Backwagon. No, no. It starts from Yalmar and goes towards Save.
Okay.
So he told me initially that let's head towards Save, and I was actually just heading straight. But in between, we have this transport worketh office. So in
Yeah.
his mind, he wanted to go back to the transport worketh office after finishing my test. But he
Yeah.
never told me that turned right.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he might indicate it some time in between with his hand, but he never explicitly told it.
Okay.
So at the roundabout where we have this transport worketh office, we have
Mm-hmm.
to take a right at the
Mm-hmm.
roundabout. But
Okay.
in my mind, he told me that I have to go to Savi, which is straight ahead. So I
Mm.
was going to take the second exit, but then he basically put hand on my steering and forced it to
Oh.
take a full round and then
Uh-huh.
take the right.
Okay.
So that was a situation when I also panicked myself. Oh, this what is happening here? But then he basically also apologized that he was not clear with his instructions, and it
Uh-huh.
was his fault because of which this happened.
So when you faced the situation, what was your feeling? How did you overcome this challenge?
It was actually very because it was happening really fast. My
Yeah.
idea was to go straight, but he wanted to go right, and I
Uh-huh.
already went towards the straight. So he took me. He put my steering towards left, and we
Mhm.
missed. When he put it towards left, I was thinking that he's going into another densely built up areas. So
Right.
I could not actually even comprehend even at that time that he want to go through the traffic work. So I
Mm-hmm.
even wanted to go to the next exit, but no, he was still forcing me to left and then again left towards the transfer work office. So eventually I would say that I could not comprehend it. I could not figure it out. But
Mm-hmm.
he took the steering and but what I was doing at that time, I was not able to figure out where he wants to go. But I was making sure that I am not endangering someone else when he's doing that. So I was looking around that, okay, there's no one, no one, no one, no one, and making the situation more safe.
Uh-huh.
Although
So
it
you
was,
had this fear like, oh God, no, this maybe after this things change. I mean, there may be some negative feedback from you. Were you fearing about this?
yeah. So after this incident, we went to the traffic worker and he asked me to park at a suitable location. And
Mm-hmm.
within these last, let's say, 2 minutes, in my mind, I was like, oh God, I've failed it because of this one particular mistake. But the point was that in those last 2 minutes, when we were going from that roundabout to the parking of the traffic worker, even the instructor, the examiner was apologizing. It was my mistake. I have told you explicitly, or I forgot to tell you. So I was not very sure, but I was negative in my mind. Oh, I think I have failed. But he asked me to park inside, and then the parking lot was pretty empty. So I chose
Mm-hmm.
a very easiest spot where I can park perfectly within the lines. So I did that, and then after he told me that you have passed, it was good.
Wow, that's nice. So
Yeah.
if you
So
could go back, what's one piece of advice you would wish someone had given you when you were just starting?
when I was just starting,
Yeah.
actually, I think the best advice was given already to me
Okay.
one day before
Ah.
my exam
Uh-huh.
by one of my instructor, where he told me that you drive good, but just
Uh-huh.
be confident,
Okay.
and like you have to show the confidence to the examiner, and that's
Uh-huh.
what I really liked, and I think that is the whole thing that makes you less nervous yourself, and
Mhm.
also it gives a good impression on the examiner that you can tackle situations if something goes wrong.
Okay, that's nice to hear about your whole journey. What resources or tips or strategies you would recommend to our listeners who are just busy, beginning their journey to get a license?
So what I after all this thing, what I realized that what should be the best strategy to tackle this exam is try to have your risk assessment theory and practical exam as nearby as possible. Like, don't have too much of space between them. Specifically, don't have space between theory and practical exam.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you have studied for a month for a theory, you know the things, you know the situations that are given in various apps or online resources, or even when you do exam of theory, you get to know various new situations. And when you give the practical exam right after it, let's say within a week, you already have these things in your mind, these situations in your mind that can arise, and
Mm-hmm.
that helps you to not make blunder mistakes because your theories is still refresh in your mind.
Of course. Yeah.
Once
Mm-hmm.
you do it after like 2 months or 3 months, you have
Mm-hmm.
been doing a lot of practice on road, but many of the things that could lead to blunder mistakes have been gone out of your mind. So that is a very key thing that I realized, and I think that is something that helped me actually, because since I was reading theory for almost 2 weeks, and I gave my exam on Thursday, and
Mm-hmm.
then I gave my practical on Monday after that. So after 3 days from my
Quite
theory.
close. Yeah. Yeah. Quite.
So that made me not make any blunder mistakes. You can, and that is also one more thing, that you can make small mistakes. That's not a problem.
Mm-hmm.
You can make small mistakes, and specifically if you make a small mistake just because you forgot it, you
Mm-hmm.
can let the examiner know that, "Oh, I knew it, that it should happen like this, but I forgot it."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So they know that you are a bit nervous today because it's an exam.
Of
So
course. Yeah.
something we can forget. So small things, if you forgot, if everything else was fine, then they will not take as it as very negative.
Mm-hmm.
And since you have read the theory just recently, you most likely will not do any major mistake or very blunder mistakes.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah.
So, Akash, it was really nice hearing you and really thankful to you for sharing your stories and the great insights that you gave to our listener. I'm sure our audience will find this incredibly helpful. And so it was a quite good session, and that's all. So it's
Mm.
been a pleasure having you on the show. And thanks again for your time and for the response and for the detailing you gave us. It was really a pleasure for us.
Thank you for inviting me here, and it was also nice.